나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 We are going to speak some more about the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. And just as a tickling for your insight, let me once again make this very earthbound. You know, you hear me say all the time, well, there's no mysticism in Buddhism. Well, this idea of 3,000 realms in a single thought moment can seem borderline, right? Is that really realism, or is that, kind of mushy or hard to define, undefined even? So let me put this to you in a more modern way. Maybe just because earlier I was watching an episode of PBS Space Time, a great science program, great monitor, and they were talking about what was this one about? Superdeterminism. I think that's very much the sticking point with some people. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Deeply appreciate your patronage, your likes, and your subscriptions are vital to getting the information on Shakyamuni's teachings out to more people. So thank you for that bodhisattva work. And so we're going to get into our continuing dialogue, oration, on the differences in this particular understanding of the Lotus teaching versus, in Nichiren's day, the other 8 prevailing schools or sects of interpretations of Shakyamuni's teachings. And just so to A, demystify, B, lend a little more contemporary understanding to what this amazing insight that Shakyamuni achieved. When we talk about the 3,000 existences or the 3,000 realms or the 3,000 worlds or the 3,000 aspects or whatever, what Buddhism is identifying with numbers all the time, numbers like the sands of the Ganges, and a number we can't fathom, is using a numerical logic because to a human being, that's very concrete, that's very real. And then to take that very real thing and extrapolate it into no less real a field, but so gargantuan, so amazingly large as to break the boundaries of our samsaric tightness about what is real and what is not real. Why do we do that? Why does Shakyamuni do that all the time? Buddhism is about the mind, yes? So, he's trying to get us unstuck. Because what his insight, and I keep running into this with the teachings, it's just so mind-blowing. Exactly that. There's a concept in science and physics that pretty much all of us are familiar with by now. And some of you, are practiced in different fields of science. So you know about the double slit experiment. You know about something called the wave function. That everything we observe at the fundamental or the smallest level we can observe, observer, right? Has a behavior, a beingness that is undefinable in either its location or its speed. Why those two? Because when you try to identify it, you need to have it located, or at least know how it's moving. It's until you identify it, that location, that identification holds it in a specific place in space-time. But that's all a quest of the observer, the mind. Whatever apparatus we create in order to observe, in this case, the mind. So what does the wave function say? And I think this is really critical to ponder and maybe understand. That in physics, the wave function is exactly what Buddhism identifies as potential. Remember, I keep saying the act of formation is where we need to focus our mind. We tend to focus our mind on the forms, the thingness. And so from that idea of thingness, we get attached. We want more, we want less, we don't want to lose, we want, right? I keep talking about this possessive attachment, whatever words you want to put around it. What begets our suffering in life, our anxieties in life, our stress in life, is this idea of permanence, of static thingness. And we know that everything arises, and it appears to be there linearly for a while, as it is at the same time decaying. How we resolve that in our minds, I'm not sure. Oh, it exists, but it doesn't. Or it's existing, but as it fades away. Okay, you're missing the point here. You're having a problem with time dilation. If it is constantly in change, then does it truly exist? Because when we say something exists, we tend to put an aspect of continuing existence to it. That's where our suffering begins, because that's not true. Nothing exists in that way. Nothing is permanent. Everything is an expression of a process that's going on. We can appreciate it that way, but we can also experience the fact that it is just a bubble in the froth, and at some point it will no longer be there. So the idea of possessing it becomes kind of silly, right? Non-relevant. And when we let go of that, I don't have to worry about losing it. I never owned it. I'm just observing it. It's a paradigm shift in the way we experience life, the universe, this process, this wave function. And so in describing the moment-to-moment thingness of time, Shakyamuni expresses this arbitrary term, which is constructed. If you study 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, you understand that the 3,000 comes from the 10 realms and the 10 realms in the 10 realms and the 10 factors of that expression of those potentials. The interference pattern of the double slit experiment, the wave function, I hate this word, collapsing into thing. What physics doesn't spend a lot of time explaining is that collapse, that quantum idea of the collapse of the wave function, collapses moment, whatever a moment is. This fractional experience of time is constantly collapsing. And what's that collapse consist of? The choices of observation that your mind is making is simply an influenced collapse of innumerous wave functions. And in the next moment again, in the next moment again. So 3,000 only defines a pathway. The numbers are unknowable. And this is what we influence with our Buddha mind, our ultimate observator. I like that one, actually. So your experience of your life, or life in general, however you want to look at it, is an energetic evolution, moment to moment, of your tendencies and conditions, which, innumerable as they are, influence your observer, therefore influence the collapse of innumerable wave functions. In other words, potentials, possibilities. And those collapses are just manifestations of that. And this is why your experience of the world is different than mine, or theirs, or another culture. This is just a matter of the momentum influencing our... It's like, take it to the physics lab. The equipment that I use to observe influences how I observe what I'm observing. Well, the equipment that you use is your manifestation, your set of parameters, your momentum, my momentum. Right? So Buddha doesn't follow that rule. It doesn't care. It's not influenced by your apparatus, your momentum. It just is. This is the process. This is where we come up with the word equanimity, because everything from every standpoint and every observer sees the process, and the process is the process. It's not influenced by your apparatus, your particular momentum. And therefore, no matter who you are, how subtly or majorly your apparatus is different from mine or hers or his. Buddha, which all our minds are capable of using, seeing, observing through, same. And with that observer, we can then return to our apparatus and modify, influence our momentum toward truth, toward actual what is manifesting. So differences get minimized in our emotional, experiential state to a much more equanimous understanding, participation, being in the flow of all of it, instead of seeing us separate, distinct, right? Because that's a form of what? Attachment, non-progression, obstinance, obstacle. So, let's get into it. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Question. Does the Shingon sect adopt the 3,000 existences contained in one thought? See the shift between realm, existence. Right? We hear the word existence and we think thing, static. Realm allows us to be a little more fluid about that. It's like the wave function versus the particle. Thinking in particles, though, immediately shuts us down to the idea of potential. Particle says is, but it isn't. Particle really is, when you dig into it, a select group of energetic functions manifesting in a particular set of circumstance, conditions. So when we think about it, as a wave function, like an energetic wave, think magnetic wave, it becomes far easier to understand how fluid, made up of innumerable choices, an experience of life is. See, there's the dividing line. Is life, this potential's manifesting, it's just ongoing. It doesn't care, quite literally. It's just doing what it does. You care, I care, she cares because we're observers. We are one step removed, even though we're within that process, yeah? We are an apparatus that's capable of the mind that perceives that apparatus. And so we have a vantage point. We have a location. And the moment you have location, you have a determination. And that is what Buddha, what Shakyamuni is identifying as the fulcrum, the point where a decision must be made. Do we observe and appreciate this constant point making, this measurement making, or do we realize that if we back off of that measurement and just look at the process, all of the garbage and the baggage of that goes with identification, point making, creates dissonance, suffering. Does the Shingon sect have that in its teaching? Well, as we know, the Shingon sect basically ripped off every other sect, including the Lotus, to declare itself somehow different and better. So let's see how Nichiren answers this. The commentary on the Great Sun Buddha Sutra, preached by Subakarashima for Vajrabodha, or Vajrabodhai, Pukung, and I Ching of Tang China, and written by I Ching, has 5 versions. Interesting. Neither Dengyo nor Kobo saw it in the 10 facils. It was transmitted later to Japan by Grandmaster Chisho. It states this. So in other words, by saying that it wasn't seen by Dengyo, he's saying, well, historically, Dengyo didn't have an opportunity to tear it apart and demonstrate its inferiority. So, because it shows up later, Chisho can say, well, see, this is more true. Such is the history of man, yes? So here goes the quote. This great Sun Buddha Sutra is the secret treasure of the King of Dharma, the great Sun Buddha, and is seldom shown to base persons, right? This is for the elite. So don't be surprised you didn't know anything about it. This sales pitch is as old as man, yeah? It is like Shakyamuni Buddha, who preached the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma, summarizing what he had preached in over 40 years after 3 earnest requests of Shariputra and the others. The substance of this great Sun Buddha is the most profound and secret of the Lotus Sutra. Oh. So he goes ahead. Lotus Sutra is the culmination of Shakyamuni's teachings. But the great Sun Buddha Sutra, well, it's the teaching of what the point of the Lotus Sutra was about. Much better. Okay. Therefore, what is meant by the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the duration of the life of the Tathagata, when it states, quote, I, the Buddha, live on Mount Sacred Eagle and everywhere, so on and so forth. My pure land is indestructible. But people consider it burnt up, end quote. Must be the same as enlightenment in Shingon Buddhism. Also, as the most profound secret of the Lotus Sutra is the substance of the great Sun Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, at the earnest request of Bodhisattva Maitreya, his successor, 3 times decided to reveal the eternal life of the Buddha. Now it's getting circular, yeah? The commentary on the Great Sun Buddha Sutra also states, quote, the idea of the Great Sun Buddha Sutra includes all the Buddhist doctrines horizontally. Its Jushin chapter states, quote, various things in the world are egoless and consist of 5 elements in combination according to the rule of cause and effect. Based on this unworldly idea, people dare not seek the Mahayana principle of emptiness, end quote. Now see, this is where it backslides into almost Hindu kind of thinking. That everything is made up of chemistry, right? Earth, wind, fire, so on. And therefore it can't be empty because we're so allegiant to stuff. Now he's talking about manifestations as reality. We've been talking about formations. Now we slide all the way back into form. It shows that this sutra is inclusive of all Hinayana sutras, precepts, and discourses, so he freely admits it. It teaches that by contemplating the store consciousness, the alaya vijnana, right, of the nidana, which is the substance of all existence, or the experience of it, we see that the mind is by nature non-producing. So now he's flipping concepts over. He's saying by virtue of karma, your engine of forms, attachment, that the mind doesn't create anything. That is to say that the Great Sun Buddha Sutra is inclusive of such doctrines as 8 consciousnesses, 3 kinds of existence, and sentient beings without Buddha nature. So he's denying the 9th consciousness. He's saying that at fundament, we're just animals, and we're just kind of mopping up the energy of the universe as a collection like dust bunnies. The sutra preaches also that there's no self in various things in the world which comes to existence according to the rule of cause and effect, and that the whole Dharma is perfect and interfused. It's a lot. He's just throwing a lot of terminology around, seeing what sticks, yeah? It means that the various realms of wonder described in such sutras as the flower garland and wisdom are all put into the Dharma world of the Great Sun Buddha. So now you're just supposed to accept that all these different teachings just fall under the Great Sun Buddha. Quote, one knows oneself as one is, end quote. Well, yeah. But what one is a moment of observation in a process. This is what he's convenient leaving out. One knows what one is refers to the Buddha's wisdom, in which included are the nirvana doctrine of Buddha nature, possessed by every living being, one vehicle doctrine of the Lotus Sutra, inclusive of all the teachings of the Buddha, and the esoteric store of the Great Sun Buddha Sutra. Thus, the essence of various sacred words and sutras are all stored in this Great Sun Buddha Sutra. So he's said a lot of facts, but he's just superimposing the Great Sun Buddha Sutra as the more ultimate, even though it came out of nowhere. The latter part of the 7th facile of the commentary on the Great Sun Buddha Sutra, which both Grandmaster Kobo and Dengyo saw, reads, quote, it is needless to say that reciting sutras earnestly in the Tendai sect is namely the perfect and sudden way of breathing meditation, end quote. This reveals the Tendai doctrine of 3,000 existences contained in one thought, Ichinen Sanzen, being adopted by the Shingon sect. Of course, they were the vacuum cleaner of all the greatest scholarship, claiming it as this new teaching when it was already there. The biography of Hang Kuang in the biographies of eminent Buddhist masters of Sung China, Facile 27 says, quote, Shingon Buddhism was transmitted to China during the reigns of Emperor Huizong and Daizong. Daizong respected Han Quan, or Gango, as he respected his teacher, Tripitaka Master Pukung. By an imperial order, Han Quan went to Mount Hutai for training, achieving splendid merit. Just then, the 6th patriarch of the Tendai sect, Miao Lo, who mastered the Zen meditation for dispelling illusions, conceived by Grandmaster Tendai, entered the quiet and peaceful Mount Hutai together with some 40 monks in the area of the Yangtze and Huai rivers. Meeting with Huikwang, Miao Lo inquired about the propagation of Buddhism in the area west of China. Huang Quan then told Miao Lo that a monk from a certain country who had mastered the Mahayana principle of emptiness, asked Grandmaster Tendai questions about the doctrine. Han Kuang also quoted a monk from India who had told him, quote, I heard that the doctrine of Tendai, discriminating between right and wrong, clarifying partial views from the complete view, and revealing the method of Qigong, contemplation to dispel illusions, great concentration and insight, is the most meritorious. I hope you will bring works of Tendai translated into Sanskrit if you have a chance to come to India again. The Indian monk repeated his request several times, grasping the hands of Han Kuang, who related the incident to Grandmaster Miao Lo. Nichiren continues, the reason why incidents such as this happened was that there were many who followed the theory of Nagarjuna in southern India and hoped to spread the Tendai doctrine, which had transmitted the teaching of Nagarjuna correctly. It is stated in the meanings of the aspiration for Buddhahood, Facile 3, quote, Master I Ching was a Zen master who had trained himself in the I Ching Samadhi of the Tendai sect. He practiced it so seriously that what he preached tended to be the same as that of Tendai in expression and rhetoric. When Han Kuang, disciple of Tripitaka master Pukung, returned to India, an Indian monk told him, quote, I heard of the teaching of Tendai in China. How about translating and transmitting it into India? End quote. The thinking of Tripitaka master Pukung is, in some parts, similar to that of Tendai. Now, a certain master, a Buddhist master, is said to have made his disciples all angry when he said, quote, if one wants to study Shingon Buddhism, in the first place he should study Tendai theology at the same time. This shows that Shingon Buddhism is also mixed with Tendai theory or theology. So this is, but we need a whole history lesson to pick and plug where these transmigrations of information happened, right? In the Tripitaka teaching, the Hinayana and the Agama Sutras, they preach that the 6 realms, the lower realms of hell, rage, and, hell, hungry beings, insatiableness, beasts, animality, Ashura, anger, manipulation, backstabbing, human beings and heavenly beings, the state of calm, nin, or rapture, all stem from the mind without saying that they are innate. In other words, our mind is just this idle observer that is in no way connected to existence or this body. It just free floats and experiences things as they happen. Common teaching, the Mahayana Buddhists, early Buddhism, says that the same as the Tripitaka teaching that the 6 realms stem from the mind, but does not preach that they are innate in the mind. In other words, that the mind contains these energetic predilections, tendencies, and conditions. In the distinct teaching, it preaches that the 10 realms are in the mind without saying that they are innate. Therefore, the 10 realms it preaches are called the 10 realms in thinking. So it's only when you use the mind to think that all of a sudden these parameters appear. The perfect teaching in the pre-Lotus Sutras, such as the Qigong, does not say that the mind is equipped with 10 realms, so their 10 realms are also the 10 realms of thinking. The perfect teaching, as the perfect teaching of the Lotus Sutra preaches, that of the 10 realms contains the characteristics of the other 9 realms and that they are innate in the mind. That the mind is actually this roiling process of constantly observing manifestations of potential. And how it observes those manifestations depends on the tendencies and conditions of the apparatus that instantiates the mind. Other 9 realms. The 10 realms it preaches is called the 10 realms beyond thinking. Right? It's not applied thinking, it's observation. It's pre-thinking. Question: does the Flower Garland Sutra speak of the 3,000 existences contained in one thought, Ichinen Sanzen doctrine? In other words, where's the source of this point of experiencing how the world works? Just like science, what is the ultimate building block of experience, right? Answer: the Flower Garland Sutra preaches, quote, the 3 mind, Buddha, and living beings are fused in one. So again, this is talking about the teaching itself. What we call the mind, what we call Buddha, and what we call the apparatus, the living beings, they all are happening in the same thought moment. Right? The 3 bodies of Buddha. It's just different ways of saying the same thing over and over and over. And the Great Concentration and Insight, Moho Chikwan, Facile 1 says, quote, this one moment of mind consists of the void, impermanence, and the middle, which are all related to one another, inseparable in any direction, and existing in the same place at the same time, time-space. How wonderful it is. Besides, not only a mind is this way, but a Buddha and living beings are also this way. Therefore, it is preached in the Flower Garland Sutra that a mind, a Buddha, and living beings are one and inseparable. It shows that a mind is equipped with all things. Then he goes on. The annotation on the Great Concentrated Insight, Facile 1, explains this, quote, the reason why Grandmaster Tendai quoted the passage from the Flower Garland Sutra is because he intended to verify that the Lotus Sutra and the Flower Garland Sutra are the same in claiming that the mind, the Buddha, and living beings are one and inseparable. As I say, from beginning to end, Shakyamuni was teaching the same thing. He didn't vary. He just taught it to different capacities, right? To bring people up to self-realization. For this reason, praising the mind of a bodhisattva in the initial stage, the Flower Garland Sutra preaches, quote, the mind, the Buddha, and living beings are one and inseparable. Buddhas know well that everything stems from the mind. If one understands this, one can truly meet the Buddha. To meet the Buddha is to be the Buddha, the mind facility that we all have. A body is not a mind, nor is a mind a body. They are separate entities, but are able to render all sorts of Buddhist functions, which none but the body and the mind have been able to achieve. If one wants to know all the Buddhas in the past, present, and future lives, one should contemplate that a mind makes those Buddhas. If not for the 3,000 existences contained in one thought, the doctrine of Tendai, it would be impossible to make out the meaning of this passage cited from the Flower Garland Sutra. End quote. The Great Concentration and Insight, the Moho Chikwan, Facile 5 states, quote, it is stated in the Flower Garland Sutra that just as a talented painter with a paintbrush draws every phenomena as it really is, a mind produces everything and phenomena in existence. The 5 aggregates, right? I mentioned that before, the skandhas, the consciousnesses, which constitute all existences are matter, perception, conception, volition, and consciousness, which are derived from the body and mind of every living being in 10 realms. Right? Are you following this? It's over and over again. Perception, the mind. Emergent from the apparatus, which is instantiations, manifestations of particular tendencies and conditions, observes all reality within the confines of those tendencies and conditions. And you could say makes real, but it's already there. It's just that the mind is the local observer of reality for that apparatus, you and me, body, and mind, emergent of this apparatus, that perceive, observe it. See, it's desperately important for Shakyamuni to make sure that we understand at the fundamental level what's going on here in our experience of samsara. Because if we understand it at that level, then we understand what's happening when we feel attachments, when we feel despondent or anxiety or stress. We can then observe that very experience as an obvious reaction to what we're attached to. And if we do that, we become our own parent, observing the child in us just with compassion. Well, you don't have to do that. Oh, come here, let me comfort you. This is just part of growing up, part of the process of life. Shh, 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 shh. That Buddha, that mind observer, parent, teacher, sovereign. See how it all comes together? Let's continue a little further. It also states each of the 10 kinds of 5 aggregates in the 10 realms have 10 dharmas in them. These 10 dharmas refer to 10 aspects: appearance, nature, rewards and retributions of all things and phenomena, and the ultimate equality of these aspects despite their differences. Isn't that a repetition of what I was saying moments ago? It further preaches that one mind contains 10 Dharma worlds, realms. Each of the 10 realms contain 10 realms in it, making 100 Dharma worlds to exist. As each of the 10 realms, moreover, contains 30 modes of experience or existence, there are altogether 3,000 modes of existence in 100 Dharma worlds. That is to say, 3,000 modes of existence are contained in an instant of our thought. End quote. It is stated in the 5th facile of the Annotations on the Great Concentration and Insight, quote, Grandmaster Tendai explained all sorts of ways of contemplation, such as Kukai Samai, Kanjin Jikiho, Jukyoho, and Shoshikan, showing the way of deliberating 3 impermanences: Dharma impermanence, receiving impermanence, and nominal impermanence, by means of individual contemplation. However, he revealed neither the term of 3,000 existences contained in one thought moment, nor the method of contemplation based on it. In his treatise on the contemplation of the mind, Tendai paid much attention to the 4 minds: self, others, cooperation, and nothing, through 36 questions. But he did not go as far as to reveal the 3,000 existences contained in one thought moment doctrine. He only briefly touched upon 10 realms of contemplation in his 4 types of meditation. Describing the method of contemplation clearly in Facile 5 of the Great Concentration and Insight, in the 7th chapter, Right Contemplation, Tendai, for the first time, showed the doctrine of the 3,000 existences contained in one thought moment as the guiding principle for contemplation, which when we contemplate, when we meditate, take all those words and everything you've heard about them and throw them in the trash, because what we're now talking about when we say meditation, contemplation, is active meditation. It's chanting, singing, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. From that, we instantiate, we take hold of the formations, and we observe clearly. And what do we call that observing clearly without outside influences or even the influence of our own energetic wall of momentum? We call it Buddha. Follow? All right. That's a lot. That's fundamental to your understanding of what you're doing when you chant. So, yeah, it's a lot, very condensed in a moment. But I can also tell you that in 750 videos that I've posted on this channel, it's all about that. So yeah, it's very dense. You may have to spend some time really reading through this or listening through this over and over and over until you get those little aha moments. This is what our practice is for. This is what our practice is designed around. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for your allegiance, for your participation. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Practice can bend the mind. But let's bend it toward Buddha, yeah? I appreciate all of you, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you, patrons. You're all patrons. You just have different mechanisms of supporting this practice. Stick with it. I appreciate all of you. Thanks again. Bye for now.